Hey friends, welcome to the Empowered Homes Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to grow strong families by connecting church and home. Today in studio, just me and Meg.
Yeah.
What's up, Meg?
Not much.
How's life?
How's life? Well, I was just telling you that leading up to events, we have a big event coming, our Empowered Homes Conference, that I start having weird dreams and sleeping patterns. So life is kind of weird.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like...
We've been running hard. We'll talk about some of the stuff we've been doing with Empowered Homes, and then just ministry going on. The set off the fire alarm this morning at 5:30 at church, and got to talk to fireman, he did not want to be here. He barely got out of the truck and was like, "Y'all good?" I said, "Yes, sir. We're sorry," and he literally turned around and got back in the truck. It was so. It's been an adventurous season as we're diving in, but we're kind of in the middle of our conference on the road. We talked about that a couple episodes back of all the stuff that we've had. We had Dad Tired, which was awesome. Dad Tired Retreat with Jared Lopes. We got to be with over 200 men from 30 different states, and just a great day. I need to find out how many guys were baptized on Sunday. We had a great group of guys that were baptized. They made a decision, they'd never been baptized, or they didn't really understand it, or different stories and backgrounds. And guys just they stepped up, and it was a great time. I brought several guys with me, and it was just a good time. But then, fast forward after that, we had a conference up in Dallas. What did we do in Dallas, Megan?
We were at Conclave. It was a whirlwind 48 hours of driving up to Dallas and setting up our booth, and we had fun meeting leaders, and they came from all different areas of family ministry, and we had some really cool conversations of people that we met the year prior that came back and were like, "Hey, we've been using your stuff. We've been linking to your website. We've been sending our parents different resources. Thank you for that." We had people come back that were like, "Okay, I remember meeting you last year, but tell me again, what do you do? Because I know that we want to use this." And so it was just a sweet time of talking to people and learning their stories of how they do ministry and how we can partner with them and help them. And tell them about the guy when you were telling him it was free. How did he react to you?
It was, which one? There were so many.
The one that was, what did he say? He was like, "Stop it," or something.
Yeah, he just got real loud and animated. He's like, "For free." Because, that's the thing with Empowered Homes, that we're at Conclave as an exhibitor trying to promote ministry, and there's, I don't know how many other exhibits there are, 50, 60.
At least, tons.
And most of them are trying to sell a product or get you to buy into whatever they have. And he just his brain glitched. He just couldn't understand, okay, you do all this and it's free. We get that sometimes from folks. And then they always ask okay, what's the catch? How is this funded? And then we get to promote and share of no, this is a mission of our church, that we want to see homes transformed, and we know that can be anywhere. And so we want to give this away. It just gives us a cool way to recast vision and help them see how Empowered Homes can make an impact. So Conclave was fun. I got to do a breakout, and the breakout, we're at DBU, and so there's listeners maybe been to DBU. The campus is beautiful. It's kind of old. Some of the buildings and facilities. Yeah. It's awesome. But where they put me, I was worried. It's underneath the library. Yeah. And there was a staircase that you had to go through the library to get to, and I thought for sure people are going to try to find it and just give up and not come. But
we almost gave up.
I was ready to give up. I was like, just scratch me off the list because I can't find the room. But we found the room, and we had a great it was packed. Tons of great leaders asking great questions. I actually have 2 leaders that I'm doing follow-up calls this week. Just, hey, help me understand my context, how we can prioritize family ministry, and that's a big part that we're starting to see Empowered Homes. Yes, we have resources, but really partnering and walking alongside churches to lead and go after parents and equip parents. It's a lot of fun. God's working, and it's cool that we get to be a part of this.
Absolutely. We get to just watch him work, and we want to be faithful to where he's working. And so we get excited when we leave conferences like that, because we have some really cool interactions with people. And
so if you're listening, or you're a new listener because of Conclave, like, make a comment or let us know, like, hey, I was there, I met you, or whatever. Because we remember everybody.
Absolutely.
Everyone. And we'll try to. But this podcast, we kind of launched into talking about where we're going, what we're doing. But we're going to point to the rest of the episode is going to be an interview I had on Zoom with Jason VanRuler. And Jason is a psychologist and counselor, and just came out with a great book called Getting Past Your Past. We'll talk about that here in a second. But with the podcast, we've had the last start of season 4, looking at numbers and just growth. Like, you see the chart. I think I sent it to you. Like, the chart, it's like, oh, okay, going. But since season 4, it's like exponentially higher. So listeners are listening, and they're going. And some faithful listeners have made comments about the studio.
Yes. I think I'm one of them.
Yes, Megan, you're one of them. So the studio, it's the podcast studio.
It is.
It's where we do all of our episodes, and it's fun and it's exciting. It's a little boring.
A little. I mean, when I edit out to grab pictures and stuff, and I look at this wall back here, it's just so plain. Yeah. Sad. So for those of you who are just listening, because we know a lot of you just listen on Apple Podcasts, it's a very plain wall. So you can go to our social media coming up here, because I'm going to post some pictures of what our studio looks like, and we would love for you to be able to see that. So if you don't watch, you can either go to our social media, or you can go to YouTube and watch us. Yeah,
go to YouTube. We have really bright, I almost said yellow. This is not yellow. They're orange. Really bright orange chairs.
Yes.
I don't know why I thought yellow. It came out of my mind.
It's okay. You were up early.
Yeah. So orange chairs, is that the best thing?
I mean, they make a statement. But here's the thing that many listeners or those watching don't know, that we all know, is they're tricky because the arms have been removed. And so if we don't warn people...
Yeah, if we lean back...
You almost fall,
It's kind of sketchy, for sure.
I mean, we're just keeping people awake on their toes. Yeah. Are you paying attention?
They look good on camera. Eric, the orange, it's popping on camera. So chairs are... So let's tell them what we're asking listeners to help us with. Like, we need some help.
We do need help. We
need ideas.
Yeah, I'm open to all the ideas. Yeah. And we'll just examine all of them and be like, oh, that does sound like, I've seen podcast studios where they sit in big comfy chairs and they don't have a table, although I do like our table. Did you build it?
I built this table.
Yeah. So I don't think we'll get rid of the table, but I mean, we're just open to all the options, like color. We're thinking maybe a sign or something here.
What the sign should say.
Yeah.
So any ideas, send it to us. You can comment on YouTube or email us podcast@empoweredhomes.org. We'll give a winner a prize.
Yeah.
So we've been doing this thing at conferences that we kind of caught on, and I'm anxious to see if this will even happen, if anybody will comment or help us. But I'm going to throw it out, Meg. Okay. You don't even know this is coming.
I'm scared.
The winning idea to help, the person who helps us the most transform the podcast studio, we will send them some brand new AirPods.
Ooh. I like it. I mean, I would comment for AirPods.
Okay.
Will you send them to me if I comment?
If you do a good job and make this look better, you will get AirPods. No, we've been giving AirPods away at conferences, and I was like, why not the listeners that don't go to conferences to get a shot at getting some AirPods? So if you're listening, comment, email us, say, hey, here's what you need to do, and the person who helps us the most, we'll bring them on the podcast. If they're local, we'll bring them in studio.
Yes.
If they're not, we'll Zoom, and we'll talk, and we'll let them get on on the podcast.
Yes.
We make it a big deal.
That's right.
Is that
We'll
okay?
we'll announce all of the wonderful things that they've contributed.
Yeah.
Because we're all about contributors here.
Yeah, we need contributors. So if you're listening, before we jump into the rest of the podcast with Jason VanRuler, comment, let us know, email us. We want to know how we can make this podcast studio pop.
That's right.
We have some ideas, but we love to take you up on it. So if you're listening, you got homework for a chance to win some brand new AirPods. Eric, you going to throw some ideas in? Yeah? Okay. For sure. All right. It's going to be good. So let's jump in. We're about to play our interview with Jason VanRuler. It's a fascinating understanding of getting past your past. I know it's a weird transition, but a lot of publishers send us books. A lot of times we get things that we're like, oh man, this is perfect for our people. This is perfect for Empowered Homes. This will connect with our listeners. There's times we get books where like, I'm not real sure this fits. But when I got this book, I knew immediately like I needed to get on Zoom or a phone call with Jason because a big part of Empowered Homes is that personal growth side of understanding that if we want to be parents who are equipping our children as the primary faith trainer, we've got to be healed up. We have to be healthy as parents because out of the overflow of what God's doing with us, then we can lead at home. And so a big part of that we have seen throughout the years and just reality is a lot of parents are wounded based off of their family of origin. I know we were talking before. I mean, you had a perfect childhood, right?
Oh, I mean, I can't think of one thing that went wrong, and I'm not still affected by it at all.
Yeah, same. Like everything was smooth.
Yeah.
But our family of origin, our parents, and just things we went through affect how we parent now. And so if we want to get past our past, which is his whole point of the book, is how to face your broken places to lead to true connection. It's a powerful book. It's a great interview with him. If you want more information, we'll link all the description and stuff there with him. And the cool part of the book, it just came out recently. When we did the interview, it wasn't out yet, and now we have it. There's this chapter, and they're talking about connections, and if we're not careful, if we're not really putting the effort to be connected with others, we're not. It's not natural for everybody, and so isolation is the opposite of building those connections, and so we find ourselves isolated. And there's a whole section on the book that gives you questions to work through, to process of like, are you really making connections, or are you isolated right now? And so it's super helpful and practical just to answer a few questions and go, you know what, like I'm kind of isolated. So here's the steps to take to get connected. So
that's awesome.
It's a great book. Looking forward to this interview. It'll play right after this. But Megan, we're always looking for podcast ideas. So before we play the interview, how can people tell us or give us ideas or things or topics that we can cover on the podcast? Yeah,
I think we like to know where you're at. So as a parent in your marriage, what questions do you have? Sometimes a question will spark a whole series, even with like the technology stuff, like, that came out of just some conversations that we had been having, and it sparked this whole thing. And so if you have questions or a topic that you're really interested in and you want to know, email us at, we've said, podcast@empoweredhomes.org. You can also comment on social media. You can send us a message via social media. We want to hear from you. And, we're not saying we're experts on everything, but we do want to bring resources, because that's what we're all about. We want to bring resources that are accessible and free, and then they can be freely shared throughout different churches in the kingdom. And so that's what we're all about. So we would love for you to partner with us in that way. Yeah.
Let us know what topics, what ideas, things we can talk about. And we're not experts, but we know a lot of people. So we could try to get on and and tackle those topics with the experts. So we've talked enough. But
Yes.
We wanted to talk about Conclave, where we're heading, and then do the giveaway and all that stuff. But you're really going to enjoy Jason. Great interview with him. Super excited. If you have any questions after the episode, just please email us. We've said it so many times. Podcast at empoweredhomes.org. We'd love to hear from you. Megan, any last words before Jason?
Nope. I'm excited to listen to it myself because you got to be on it.
Enjoy. Hey friends, welcome to the Empowered Homes Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to grow strong families by connecting church and home. I am on Zoom with a guy I just met, but I've already like him. This is Jason. Jason, we're so glad that you are here with us. We're going to unpack why you're here with us, but just give us a greeting, give us a welcome, and tell us who you are.
Yeah, well, I'm thrilled to be on the show and just talking with you already. It's been wonderful to get to know you a little bit better, and I like that you already like me. Usually it goes the other way, so we're off to a great start. So that's good. I'm a therapist, and so I work with all different types of people, just kind of helping them get to this place they're called to get to. So I've been a therapist for a while, got my own private practice, and then I do some speaking and have written a book, and the book's called Get Past Your Past. And in addition to that, I'm married and got 3 kiddos. So kind of a full schedule.
So, man, you got a lot on your plate, and we're going to get into the book. That's the reason I wanted to get on Zoom with you. But tell me about your kids, man. Like, we got parents that are listening, that instant credibility. But tell us about your kids.
Yeah, well, I'm going to be the proud father, and my kids are the best kids there are. So I've got 3 kids. I've got a 13-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And so just love hanging out with them. They're at ages that I think are really cool. Like, I know when we had kids, I always kind of dreamt of this season. Like when they were babies, like that was awesome. But I was kind of like, I'm not quite sure how you relate to that or what you do. And now they're just asking really great questions, and we're kind of getting to explore and do new stuff. And so it's been awesome, man. It's been such a privilege to have kids, and we struggled to get pregnant. So I never really knew if that was going to be part of our story, but it's just been such a gift.
That's so awesome, man. And kids. And I want you to kind of tell me a little bit about your childhood too, before we jump into the book. And with me, I had a rough childhood, and now I see my kids and just seeing the cycle. Like my son is in 6th grade. He just started yesterday, and I remember 6th grade, and I remember what I was dealing with in 6th grade, and I look at that going, man, he'll never have to experience what I went through 6th grade beyond, and it's just amazing what God can do. And so before we get into it, tell me about kind of your upbringing. I know that has a lot to why you do what you do today, and so share with us a little bit about your story.
Yeah. So my parents divorced when I was 8. And it was like some divorces in the sense that it was pretty volatile. And so they weren't friends after. And that kind of launched everything into chaos. And so for most of my childhood, it was just really trying to survive. So there was abuse, and there was addiction and mental health stuff. And so just kind of a lot of things going on that shouldn't have been going on. And so as I navigated through that, the goal as a kid was just really to survive and get through it. There weren't a whole lot of those moments that kids have where it felt really stable. It just felt pretty chaotic most of the time. And so living through that, I think I learned a lot about how I wouldn't want to do it, right? And I learned a lot about pain and hurt and things like that. Which are all things we learn about as we go on. But I kind of left my childhood and I said, I'm just never going to do that. That's never going to be me. But I learned pretty early on that the only way to really make that true is to learn how to do it differently. And so that was really the challenge for me that kind of started me even on the path to become a therapist. Is I tell people that was kind of a selfish pursuit first. Because I was like, I don't know how to do this. I know how I don't want to do this, but I don't know how to actually do it. And so what's been both really challenging and really amazing is to be a dad now and to say, well, I'm going to do it differently. That's meant I have to ask a lot of questions, right? My poor friends get a lot of phone calls where I'm like, what? Like, what does a dad do when this happens? And they're like, oh man, okay. And they walk me through it. But for me, it just feels like we're changing the legacy. And that's just a beautiful thing. It takes a lot of work, but we're trying to change that legacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, your kids are around the same age as mine. And I always think like, you know, we're changing the legacy, but we're not there yet. Yeah. I hope I don't still mess them up. Like there's still those guilt and those doubts or whatever. But the reality is like, you're already changing legacy for them. It's already happening. And I have to remind myself and receive that from the Lord of like, you're already doing incredible things with them, even though I feel like I fail most weeks, comparative to what I came out of. And it's so funny. Like I said, I already like you. You know, I pursued psychology and family psychology and all that stuff in grad school. And it was the same thing. Like I got to figure out what happened to me. And leaning into those things. And I learned so much about myself, but also how people work and trauma and all those things. It's a powerful thing when we can put meaning to our story so that we can walk forward. And I think that's why you put this book together, if I'm not wrong. Like get past your past is understanding, but help me lean into the person going, I don't want to go back. I don't want to go back and like, why did you like, tell me where all this came from to put this in a book, to help people see their past as a way to move forward.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think I ended up in that place where I just was really, really stuck. And I knew things weren't working. And so what the book kind of talks about initially is just this realization of, I know this place well. I've come from this place. This place is familiar. And so I can spend the rest of my life running from it, or I can face it. And so that really started my journey. And along the way, I met my wife, and she just loved me in a way nobody's ever loved me before, and said, yeah, like God's got something to do with that. And so for me, that was really the catalyst to saying, okay, not only can I be loved, but God's part of that, and there's healing here, and I've got something I really want to pursue. And so that kind of led into it. What led me to the book were some friends that just kept bothering me about it. They were like, hey, man, you got to write that book you're talking about. But what really led me to do that was when I first became a therapist, I got to work with a lot of people coming out of prison. And a lot of people might say, oh, man, why would you want to do that? But I will just tell you, like, for whatever it's worth for me, that was like some of the best times ever for me, is just meeting people in this space where they know they want to be better, but they're not sure how to do it. And so I love that spot because I just related so much. And maybe even you relate, right? Like when we both started, I was like, I don't know what to do. And so what I wanted to do is I wanted to write a book for the person who's maybe at the bottom, maybe struggling as much as they ever have, or maybe even just saying, I think I'm a little bit off from where I want to be. And I wanted to give them a practical guide for like what you'd actually do to get to the next place. Because maybe you experienced this, but I felt like when I wanted to make change, like I didn't even know where to start. And everyone's like, well, you got to do the work. And I'm like, well, what does it mean to do the work?
Yeah.
Like, that sounds kind of abstract. And so I was hoping to kind of fill in the blank for what that actually means.
No, that's all. Like, exactly. Like, do the work, trust the process. What's the process? Tell me what to do. You know, I remember.
Yeah. I'm like, I must be a little obtuse because I'm like, what does that mean? Yeah. Like, can I do that today? How does that happen?
Exactly. And I mean, I say it to my kids all the time, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm learning. I've never done this before. I've never really seen anybody do this before. And so that's a great starting point. I'm so grateful that you did this as we get into it. But, you know, I can't help. I'm playing devil's advocate of what I've heard in my office with different men that I've counseled and walked with. And why do I need to deal with my past? Why I just want to move and keep my head forward and keep moving forward. I don't want to deal with those things. What would you say to someone in your office that makes those comments?
Yeah, I mean, and that's a great question. I would say me either. I don't want to deal with it either. So I completely understand and relate to that. And the thing is that whether your past is really, really messy and ugly and broken, or your past is relatively, good and one that you really enjoyed, regardless of that, we all have things we carry along with us that aren't actually helpful and aren't actually the things that God wants us to continue to carry. And so I think for all of us, the reason we do the work, if you will, is to get a step closer to where we're called to. I don't know about you, but that's always my prayer, is just, Lord, help me to step into what you're calling me to do, and step in with both feet. And so I think dealing with our past allows us to get both feet in the same place, pointed in the right direction.
That's so good. And I don't want to go in chapter by chapter, but because it says chapter 7, you make a point. It says you got to feel it to heal it. Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think so often it's like we're given permission to have certain feelings and not other ones. And so when we have a feeling we're not supposed to have, like anger or sadness or things like that, we just kind of do this funny thing where we supposedly kind of push it down. And then it just comes out somewhere else. It's kind of like whack-a-mole. Like it doesn't actually go away. It just comes out somewhere else. And so part of dealing with some of this stuff is just to let yourself feel it. And I always am really careful, because I tell people, I'm not trying to turn you into a therapist. I'm not trying to get you to cry every day, or that's not really the goal, but it costs us something to carry that emotion we haven't felt. And so I want us to just be honest and live in the light with God and say, this is how it is. This is how I feel. Here I am.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of times, especially in I don't even think it's overt, but in the Christian world, it's almost like you're not allowed to have those feelings. You're not allowed to. I don't know why that's there. It's not overt. It's not in your face, but it is kind of this underbelly of I'm not allowed to not be okay, and we kind of. And that turns into this pose that we present ourselves in a certain way towards folks that it doesn't foster real connections. And I know you talk a lot about relationships and those things in your book. When dealing with your past, most of the work, you got to do it with somebody else. You got to have some help along the way.
Yes.
Explain what in the book what you mean about having those connections, those trusted allies, those people that are walking with you. How do we find that? How do we get that? Sometimes it is professional help, but what does that trusted that person look like, and how do we navigate that? How do we go after wanting those things?
Yeah, that is such a good question, because I think the thing is we all want that connection. We all need that connection, because as cliche as it sounds, we are who we spend our time with. So we are deeply affected by the people who are around us. And for some of us, if we've come from a place where we're not surrounded by very healthy people, it's a real challenge to identify what that might look like. And so in the book, I kind of talk about some different attributes of what I would call some safe people. And what I mean by that is just safe people in the sense that you can be vulnerable with them and share your story. Because there's going to be some people who they're going to line up to do that, and they're going to be willing and capable and helpful. And then there's going to be others who aren't. And that doesn't make them bad people. It just means that's not the role they'll play in your life. And so part of working through your past is to have some trusted people around you who can point out some of the lies you might have been believing, or point out some of the places you might not see on your own. And that's really an invaluable resource to getting better.
Yeah. And, there's power when you are across from, somebody, and not to say AA is the greatest thing ever, but there's power when you're sitting in a room going, I'm not alone. There's others who are with me, and to have that, it's definitely a huge part of healing for all folks, but even beyond whatever the work that you're doing, if you can put the work in, it only strengthens your connections later and deepens your ability to make friends and just to be a friend and to do those things, so you're not hiding or you don't feel like you have to hide or pose in a certain way. You can be authentic, as you were talking about. Mm-hmm. It's a powerful thing to have others around. But what do you say to that person that's like, I don't want to let people in, I don't want people to help me, I don't want people to love me? How do you walk with those folks that say, like, no one really loves me anyway, so I'm just going to keep doing the same pattern, same routine over and over?
Yeah. I mean, I think I go back to like what God does. So, you got that at least, whatever the least is there. But I mean, I think, we sometimes do get stuck in that place of isolation just because we know what to expect. And so we tell ourselves that either we're too much or not enough of something, right? I mean, I know even as I wrote the book, I was like, well, my story is really important to me, but it's definitely not as bad as some. And it's worse than others. So who am I to even share this? Because, someone's going to say, well, I had it worse or I had it bad. And I think the whole thing is like our story matters to us, and that's enough. And what I find over and over again is that as much as we think we're different, sometimes I'll do these retreats and it's just this beautiful moment. Someone will say, I've struggled with this, or I've felt this way. And I bet no one else has. And then hands just shoot up around the room. And you probably experienced this. And suddenly the only person that struggled with it is surrounded by 10 others who do as well. And so I think the thing is it's easy to feel like nobody would understand. It's easy to feel like we're the only one to stay in that place. But we're actually built for community. And so where we're going to find our best self is in connection to others, not on our own. And so that's really the invitation to get better, is to connect with others.
Yeah, absolutely. And being vulnerable, and sometimes it just takes someone else and seeing someone else be vulnerable to really break that open. But for the person who's really doing the work, trying to work through their past and go through that, having that moment, even like right now, if you're listening going, yeah, but you don't know my past, but you're not alone. Like, hear me say these words. You're not alone. You're not the only one that, like, someone else on this planet has gone through, and we have a God who is right there with you and sees you and loves you. He likes you, wants to be there for you. And isolation, that's a big one, man, that, these past wounds and hurts tend to force us into this isolation because it's easy, it's more comfortable, we can hide, and that's not the way we were meant to live. That's not the way God wants us to live. He wants so much for us. So thinking through those lines and thinking about the past, I'm just, you made a comment of your story is not as bad as my story, or my story. Like, a lot of times our past has to do with someone who overtly hurt us, inadvertently hurt us. There's probably some trauma from someone in our past, and you talk about in the book about forgiveness. And I can't help but think of the listener going, yeah, but you don't know what they did to me. How do we help people receive and extend forgiveness specifically with our past?
Yeah, that's really tough. Because like you just said, sometimes we feel like some things are just beyond that. And the problem is, the longer we hold on to that and are unwilling to forgive them, we have to carry that burden, right? So we kind of have to keep that candle lit, which means we have to kind of live in that space. And so I think the challenge is, although it feels like maybe that's the thing to do, the better thing to do is to release that and to move on. And that's not to say, well, just forget about it. The best thing you do is just forget about it. No, we have to honor that certain things happen and make peace with it. And I think, when I look to God and the forgiveness that I know I've gotten, that's just a beautiful example of acknowledging what's happened, taking responsibility and accountability, and then moving on. And so for me, something I learned is I got to work with victims of some pretty terrible crimes, to be honest. And so when I worked with them, I was always surprised, because I was like, what do you want to have happen to the person who hurt you? And what I just imagined is that they would say, I wish they were dead, or only terrible things, but over and over again, what I heard from those people is, I want them to get better and to move on. And I was so confused by this because I'm like, don't you just want to hate them? And what I heard from people who were obviously a lot more emotionally mature than I was at the time is they said, if they say the same and they're never forgiven, nothing changes and it's all a loss. If they get better and they're different, there's something that came out of this. And so when I heard that, I just thought, man, a lot of times the hurt people don't even want you to hang on to it. They want you to move on too, so that some good can come out of this. So whether we're holding on to that for somebody else or holding on to that for ourselves, it just doesn't actually help us to get to where we want to go.
Yeah. Man. And you know, we talk a lot of times about our past of forgiving those who have hurt us. Like, what about the flip side? You just said, like, what if you've done something in your past that, like, how do you forgive yourself? How do you really, like, navigate and move past that? And sometimes some of those things have consequences that'll last with you for the rest of your life. But what do you say on the flip side of it to help that person who's like, I can't forgive myself for what I've done?
Yeah, that's so hard. And my clients routinely roll their eyes at me because I'll say, have you forgiven yourself? And they just give me kind of this dirty look and say, thanks a lot, Jason. And but the thing is that we don't improve what we don't believe has value and worth. So if we won't forgive ourselves, it's going to be hard to get better. And so what I would challenge people to do is make your life from today on a living apology, right? Get better, do the right things, take responsibility, be accountable. And so if you're really sorry, be the person that person you hurt looks at and says, they're a different person. They really did hurt me. I'm not denying that. I'm not pretending. And yet they're completely different now. Be that person, because sometimes that's as good as it's going to get. And you're worthy of that better life too. Yeah.
And to really believe that and to own that and wrestle with that. I mean, that doesn't happen overnight, you know, as you can't just be like, there's a switch, click. Those feelings, those thoughts, they still come back. You have to keep going back and pointing and saying that phrase over and over. They're different. They're not like it, because things are going to trigger. You're going to want to go back. It's a lot easier said than done, but it's so necessary for us to really find healing in those broken places from our past. Man, Jason, it's so, I mean, I could talk to you for hours and pick your brain on, you know, how do we walk in freedom and greater freedom from our past? But I'm so excited for your book. Again, if you're listening, the book's called Get Past Your Past, How Facing Your Broken Places Leads to True Connection. And what I love about everything is you know, the life that we're designed to live is with others and connections with others. And what I love is that you are giving us some framework for the work that we need to do to really get past our past, but it's all geared and focused to connections with God, connections with others, connections with those we love deeply, and allowing others to have connections with us, because I think without that, we're missing so much of the essence of what God has for us in the life that he wants for us. And man, I'm so excited for people to get this book in their hands. I know we're going to use it with a lot of our ministries here at our church. And man, so thankful for your work in this. Man, I can see us partnering and having you come and leading some stuff with us, man. I'm so grateful for you.
I would love that.
So as we close, just thinking about you know, the listener who's like, okay, I get what you're saying. I've got stuff that's in my past. I know exactly what you're talking about. I got it right here. It's right on my chest. What do I like? What's my first step? How can we help them make that very first step that we talked about at the beginning?
Yeah. Well, I think that's just such a beautiful place to be. And really, that is the first step, right? The first step is, to whatever extent you have that. And so I just want to say, like, it might be huge. It might be what you feel is insurmountable. It might be small. And both are okay. But the first step is to kind of acknowledge that. And then what I'm going to tell you is, you've got God. And so the beautiful thing is, when we talk about safe people and vulnerability, and like we all have a safe place to practice that. And so what I would tell people is the first step is to admit it, and the second step is to talk to God about that. And to just be honest about where you're at, how you're feeling, and then to ask for some help. And that help might be from a friend, it might be from a professional, a colleague, whoever is safe to do that with, but ask for some help and get connected.
That's so good, man. I think it's not a Jesus juke of like, have you taken that to God? Have you prayed about it? Because I think that's a lot of times like, well, have you prayed through that? Like, but the reality is like, have you really, not just in passing, not just this, yeah, I think about that, but have you gone before your Father in heaven who loves you unconditionally and given it to him and honest and raw, and he can handle it? And I think that's, for whatever reason, we've kind of, well, you can't really, I've got to be this certain way towards God, or I've got to act a certain way or be polished or put together. But God wants you exactly the way you are. He sees you. He can't hide. I joke all the time when I teach this of like, a lot of times we go to God and we act like we're Adam and Eve when they realize they're naked, like they're hiding, and God's like, God knows where they're at. Like they have this little bush behind them. It's so silly to think that we can hide, but we do it. We put those fig leaves up all the time. Taking those down is a great first step, and just taking it to God and allowing him to help you too. I think that's another thing, that allowing him to, and praying and asking God, who's in my life can I go and talk to? Like, give me somebody, point me in the right direction, lean on him and allow him to guide you. We've got the creator of the universe who loves us deeply, and we can use him for sure. Jason VanRuler, man, so grateful for you. Can't wait to get my hands on this and help so many folks get past their past. Thank you for your time today. How can people, if they want more information about you or anything that you do, your ministry, or anything that you have in your book, like where can people find you?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on. And I too could talk to you for hours. So I appreciate that. This has been really fun. You can find me, jasonvr.com is my website. And then also, kind of in the same vein of why I wrote the book, I've got daily relationship tips on Instagram and other social media, but it's jason.vanruler. And every day I'm just giving you a 30-second or 1 minute tip on how we get a little more connected to the people in our life. So if that's something you're struggling with as well, there's some free resources out there for you.
Man, thank you so much. Y'all be sure and go and follow Jason on his socials and go check out his website. The new book's coming out. You want to grab a copy. I want to close. I've got to say this. I just feel like anytime we talk about heavy topics like this or past or trauma or anything, if you're listening and you don't know where to turn and you are in just a dark place, contact us. Make a comment on YouTube right here or in our podcast description or whatever you find this at. We were more than happy to help you. You can email us at info@empoweredhomes.org. That goes straight to my phone. We would love to help you. And so if you're in this place where you don't know where to turn and you listen to me and Jason talk, we want to walk with you and help you. So do not hesitate to reach out, man. Jason, thank you so much. Look forward to connecting with you more over the years, man. I'm so grateful.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it.